Hello, welcome back. I'm happy that you're joining me here today, which in fact says a lot. It says a lot about your dedication and commitment to spiritual practice, which is the highest form of offering that you could ever make anyone, anywhere, anytime. So I thank you for that. The very fact, when you think about it, that you're even interested in this mass of practices and rituals and prayers and things called spirituality, the very fact that you're even interested in that is a beautiful thing. Because that means that you have not only heard the call of our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, to awaken, you've answered it. Even if you weren't consciously aware of it at the time, you've answered the call. So I cordially invite you to keep answering it. The very fact that you're here amidst all of the content out there on the internet is a very good thing. So let's make this time, these 20 or so minutes, time well spent as we continue to talk about true forgiveness. In other words, forgiveness the way our inner teacher sees it and teaches it. The forgiveness from A Course in Miracles. For a very helpful primer, I invite you to take a look at the last video. It's entitled How Forgiveness Works. And we go through some of the principles of forgiveness here from A Course in Miracles. And if you have not seen that video yet, I invite you to check that out. It's the very latest one here in the series. If you're just popping in, all you need to realize is that forgiveness from A Course in Miracles, as we're invited to practice it in order to wake up, is markedly different from forgiveness as the world sees it. We have an option, we have a choice right here in the present moment. There's only one choice between exactly two options: the Holy Spirit or the ego. If we think we're individuals and we think we're separate from other individuals and from God and from every other living thing, that's placing our trust and our belief in the ego. On the other hand, we could choose the voice for God, our inner teacher, who speaks truly of who we are. And if we allow him to guide us, will teach us. We have this choice in the present moment. So yes, you may shut this video off and go forth and do your thing. Go do life. This is a choice that each and every one of us have. You don't have to be interested in spirituality at all, yet you are. So I invite you to stick around. Because we all know that there are plenty of other people who are not interested in spirituality. Now, what does this tired world need but people that are dedicated and committed to spiritual practice, people that will shine the light of truth? When we side with the ego, we become totally confused. And it's no surprise because the ego itself is completely confused and nervous and tense, a nervous wreck, a defensive nervous wreck that wants to convince you that you're separate from your brother. Either you're superior to him or you're inferior to him. And it often vacillates, doesn't it? One minute you feel great, superior. The next minute you feel like you're the lowest form of life that's ever been. And it is a wild ride, isn't it? And this is what happens when we identify with the ego, which is completely confused. And no wonder it's totally confused and doesn't know what anything is or anything is for, because it does not exist. It is an illusion. So we're invited to withdraw our belief and our identification from an illusion and place our identification in truth, where it belongs. We're invited to know who we are. And I know, you know who that is. We all do. This is why we hop on this wild ride called the spiritual path in the first place, is because we we have an inkling or an intuitive hit or perhaps a thought or a collection of thoughts. Even if it's fleeting, we just have these moments where we know deep down that there's more to it than this sack of water and guts and some bones. I mean, it's 80% water. This is not the Son of God. You're not a physical body, and we all know this. We do. We could choose to deny it. No problem. Of course, we can. Had enough of that yet? And when you answer yes, which, by the way, may not be in this lifetime, but hopefully it will be. When you decide that, yeah, you've had enough, you're invited to allow your inner teacher to run the show, the whole show, everything. Let your inner teacher in. Allow. It's only scary to the ego. The ego is always afraid. Remember, it's dazed and confused and always lashes out. It's always defensive. It does not serve you as a guide. So you don't have to choose it as a guide. Choose your inner teacher instead. I mean, the ego has no idea what's even happening. It doesn't have a clue as to what reality is, and it has no idea what's going on. So if you, by identifying with the ego, have no idea what's going on, who, what, and where you are, if you have no clue, how can you be expected to act appropriately? How can you be expected to act lovingly, inclusively, joyfully? This comes down to the present moment choice that we all have between the ego and the Holy Spirit. So let's choose the Holy Spirit. I invite you to do it, even if it scares you. Do it for a fraction of a second. You're not ceding your precious power and authority to an outside being. Let's be very clear about that, because there's often some confusion about what the Holy Spirit is. And that makes perfect sense. I was raised in not one, but two fundamentalist Christian traditions where I was that kid in Sunday school who would, from time to time, ask what the Holy Spirit was. And the responses were all over the map, but there was one consistent thread. No one knew, and no one could even satisfy my curiosity. So I left the second of those two traditions when I was 15 and got my driver's license. Yeah, no more church. So that was my own experience, and I'm sure that some of you can relate to this. There are a number of people who find A Course in Miracles with a background of fundamentalism in any tradition, or perhaps you weren't raised with any religious or spiritual traditions at all. It really doesn't make any difference what the background is here, because this course is universal. We're talking about universal principles, and incidentally, if you're new to this, the genius of this is it's a self-study curriculum. You study under the guidance of your inner teacher at your own pace. You take what you choose to take at a given time. In other words, what you're willing to take at a given time. No one is forcing you. There is no hierarchy. There is no dogma. There's no thou shalt and thou shalt not. There's no sin. Because there is no sin. Why? There's no ego. God has no ego to be offended. He's not separate from you. I know you know that. You do know that. So I invite you to entertain it, even if it's only for a split second. That's enough. You'll entertain it again, and then it will come up again. And the more you watch this video series, the more it will come up again. And the more you open up the book, A Course in Miracles, or look at it online, if you do that, the more this idea will come up that there is no separation, not of any kind, ever. And that's a beautiful thing. So, as we wrap up chapter 9, section 4 in the text here, Jesus talks about the second coming. He does it in a couple of paragraphs here toward the end of this section. Let's talk about that. Now, I just mentioned a minute ago that I was raised in not one, but two, in fact, fundamentalist Christian traditions. And, well, the first one my parents left, I was about 8, I would say, maybe 9. And the second one I left, as you know, when I got my driver's license and decided I was going to go off for a hike instead of church and Sunday school. It's pretty clear that the hikes in the mountains or the desert spoke to me more than Sunday school. As I mentioned, I couldn't get any answers to any of my own deep questions. What's the Holy Spirit? I was one of these kids that asked why everyone thought God was so judgmental. I even remember asking at one point in time, why would perfect love condemn? Why would perfect love, i.e., God, judge? The responses, I mean, everyone that attempted to respond to that did the very best they could at the time, but I was not satisfied with any of the responses. Perfect love does not condemn. Love extends itself. In case you're wondering, there is no separation of any kind. So how can there be any judgment or condemnation of any kind when there's no separate other? There's no separate other. There is only perfect oneness. So back to the second coming. I remember hearing about the second coming as punishment, condemnation, special judgment, and a cool kids club. Oh, and death and hell and fire and brimstone and fear. Yeah, no, there's nothing to fear. The second coming, as Jesus puts it in A Course in Miracles, is not judgment on some people while other people get to go to the heavenly mansion, the pearly gates, where the bar's always open and the food is great, while everyone else gets to eat dirt and rocks in a fiery lake where they bubble and scream. Clearly, that's made up by people who are clinging to the ego and judgment. So I was raised, as many of you were, to see the second coming as a judgment where the elite, the Illuminati, would get into the club. They had a pass. Other people didn't have a pass. Yeah, they were parsed out and separated, separate, weeded out. No. There is no separation of any kind. So, what is the second coming? It is the return of sense. This world can rightly be likened to a dream. This is a dream. This is definitely a dream. The Son of God is not perishable. The Son of God does not last 80 calendar years if he or she is lucky, and possibly much less than that. Maybe more sometimes, maybe less other times. Yeah, that's not the Son of God. The Son of God is eternal. We are the thought of God. And this world where we identify as an individual, as an ego, and then we mistakenly, having made that mistake, we continue and compound the mistake by thinking everyone else is an ego too. So here we have our world of competition and empires and greed and torture, invasions, slavery, frustration, pain, hatred, condemnation, judgment, and fear. Identify with the ego, that's what you get. Done with that yet? Because you could choose the Holy Spirit instead. That's what we're invited to do. So the second coming is the return of sense. This is a dream. You could see all of our experience here in the world as a dream experience. It is not real. We are at home in God. When you dream here in the world, anything can happen, can't it? We have elaborate dreams where we see things that violate the conditions and definitions of what we call reality here in the world, because we're often flapping our arms and flying like birds, or we're in 25 different places at once. We see people who aren't there. We see things that aren't there when we're dreaming, and when we wake up, what happens to the dream? It's gone. It is as though it were never there, and we recognize instantly upon awakening, this was a dream. That was a dream. That was a nightmare. That was a great dream. I wish it would come back. Or that was a hot, sexy dream. That was pretty fun, and it was really random though, because well, random things happen in dreams. But what happens to reality when you're dreaming? It doesn't go anywhere. When you wake up, the dream is gone. Reality is right where it has always been. So let's consider our experience here as Homo sapiens sapiens, a made up term, really an invented term, a collection of sounds that we use to label ourselves and set ourselves apart, emphasis on apart from every other living thing. I mean, really, let's think about all of this. How often do we do this in day-to-day life? Not much, right? So let's take the time to do that right now. This is a dream. What happens to reality while we're dreaming? It's the same. It's just what it always was. Same as it ever was. Any talking heads fans in the crowd? Reality is unchanged by our mad delusions and wars. It is completely unsullied, untouched by our collective psychodrama here on Spinning Ball of Rock. It's untouched. So the second coming, in other words, awakening, is the restoration of our awareness of truth, our awareness of reality. As Jesus puts it here in the introduction to A Course in Miracles, our awareness of love's presence, our awareness of God's presence, our awareness of our own presence as one with God. That math is pretty simple. One with. Reality hasn't gone anywhere. So it's not coming back to us. We're becoming aware of it. So here in the dream, we've simply lost our awareness of truth. So what do we do here? Well, we appeal to the strength and the guidance of our inner teacher, who is part of our mind. So we ask for help and we practice forgiveness under the guidance of our inner teacher. We look beyond the surface to the core, to the essence, to the content. We look beyond the form. If we only pay attention to outward form, there appear to be 8 billion of us as human beings, plus countless other living things, birds and fish, insects, microscopic life forms. There appears to be multiplicity when we only stop at form, but we look beyond. Forgiveness is looking beyond what happens on the surface to the essence, to the core, to truth itself. What is truth itself? There is only perfect oneness. God is. What's implicit in that sentence, God is very important. What this implies is that only God is. All else is illusion. Multiplicity is illusion. So reality has not gone anywhere. It's here and it's ours. So we're invited to allow it to be just as it is and to set the ego aside. Reality is ours. So let's claim it. How do we do that? Well, we do it under the guidance of our inner teacher as we forgive, as we overlook what appears here on the surface of the dream. We go beyond that. Your brother is not separate from you. You're not separate from him. You're not separate from her, from them at all. Reality is here. It's right here, and it has not gone anywhere. We're simply waking up from a dream. So, if you're just tuning in, well, welcome. You may have wondered, as people frequently wonder, what this Course in Miracles thing is all about. Well, clearly, as you've watched this video from beginning to end, it's not about currying favor with anyone. It's not about getting special treatment, getting into the cool kids club, bribing St. Peter for our ticket to the pearly gates, where everyone else is outside suffering while we're in there drinking double martinis with hand-passed appetizers at our swanky soiree. Oh, no. It's not that way. There is no separation of any kind. If you're just joining us, clearly A Course in Miracles is not about getting stuff in the world. You may have tons of money and you may get tons of money or beautiful bottles of wine. You may have a beautiful house, a shiny, brand new ride, handsome threads, whatever. This course is not about any of that. If you have it, great. If you acquire it, great. This is not what this course is about. This course is about learning to see things as they really are, learning to see yourself as you really are, one with God, learning to see your brother as he really is, one with God, one with you, learning to see the world for what it really is, a nothing. Nothing. We're here to awaken from the dream. So along the way, to the extent that you have questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And in fact, we've had some very, very good discussions right here on YouTube on this forum. So yeah, please feel welcome to do that. And if you've not joined us yet, please do that as well. Please go ahead and subscribe because we'd love to have you. The arrow here in the corner of your screen is the subscription button. If you just click or hover on that, the subscribe prompt will come up, and we'd love to have you join us here. What you'll get here is a series of videos. And in fact, we're now over 900 of them all in all. So being that there are so many, we return to some key ideas like true forgiveness again and again. We'll do that again. But you're more than welcome to join us. There are a handful of these posted every week. So again, comments and questions are more than welcome. I thank you for joining me, and I will talk to you all very soon.